Welcome to this Website 101 session with Martin. For those of you who were on the last session that we did with Martin about a month ago, you might remember him. He's a bit of a marketing expert. He's had a long career in marketing, working for many different brands over the years for a marketing agency that he helped to run. He now has co-founded a company called OpenQuote, which I am a fellow co-founder of. A software company that provides an amazing platform for virtual site surveys for electricians. And we'll talk to you a little bit about that later on because we've got some cool updates with that. But Martin knows a lot about websites. So in this session, he's going to go through some top tips for websites, and we're going to roast some of your websites, some of you who volunteered to let us roast your websites. So thank you for that. And with that, without any further ado, over to you, Martin.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jordan. So lots and lots of people sent me their websites to review. I haven't managed to make a comment on every single website, but I have picked out some choice examples. I apologize in advance if I'm a bit mean about your website, but I know you're all like a supportive group, and it's all meant to hopefully you'll view it as constructive. But I think there are some do's and don'ts. All right, so this session is titled 101. There was some questions last time, like what's 101 mean? Well, simple terms, it's like chapter 1, lesson 1. So it's the start. It's the most basic. It's the most basic stuff. But as I'm sure you guys will know from your professions, it's often the basic stuff that gets ignored. People get very excited by the shiny new stuff and they don't do the basics. So there's a value in doing it. Now, Jordan, like rather helpfully to encourage you guys to submit your stuff, said, please join like for a website roast. I don't know if you guys know Kill Tony. Quite funny. This guy actually spoke at the Trump rallies. I think said something a bit unsavory. Unfortunately, Electricians' websites are nowhere near as funny as Kill Tony, so your sides are not going to split today. It's all going to be quite tame stuff, but I'll try and make it entertaining. But I do want you guys to be able to hopefully remember some of the things I've said, so just so you can sort of follow along with my thinking. I'm going to do 4 things basically. I'm going to start off by sharing a framework that I always use to analyze websites. It's a shortcut to just try and think like a customer. Then I'll get into the real world examples. So no electricians were harmed in the making of this presentation, but I have used all of your websites. In amongst that, there'll be sort of top tips, recommendations. And then at the end, I want to talk a little bit about call to action. To be honest, it's a topic in itself, so I'm just going to dip into it very, very briefly, but it is a very important part of a website, which is, what do people do? So I'm going to kick off with the framework. So these are 4 questions that you should have in your head that will hopefully put you in the mind of the customer. So a customer needs a thing, and for whatever reason, they come across your website. The very first question they're going to ask is, am I in the right place? It might sound a rather obvious thing to say, but because you can jump around from website to website or Instagram or wherever it is, you do need to convince people very quickly that they're in the right place so they actually stay there. The second thing you need to do is, having convinced the customer in the right place, you then need to go to the next level, which is, do you sell the specific thing that they're interested in? So just to make this come alive, you walk into a department store and you say, do you sell barbecues? Okay, do you have this model of barbecue? That's broadly what's going through the customer's head. And it's exactly the same for websites. If you make it through steps 1 and 2, then you need to kind of get into, I guess, the art of persuasion, the art of trust. So they're in the right place. You've got the thing they want, but why is it that they should decide to work with you? Why should they pick you? Why should they not just keep going to the next website, the next website, and the next website? And then the final thing that you have to do is, if you've done all that, is if they decide they want to buy, how do they do it? So if you follow those 4 steps, generally, you will produce a good website. So today, it's really not a conversation about design, this color over that color. I'm not going to be arguing about fonts. It's more at a sort of principle level. Now, if you can't remember those 4 rules, then another way of thinking about this is just imagine the best sales assistant you've ever met. Good sales assistants, they have this way, they don't really talk about themselves. They have this way of listening and understanding what you want and directing you very quickly to the right thing. And then having found the right thing, then they go into persuasion mode as to why you should pick it. And then before you know it, you're at the till and they've sold you the store card. That's really how you should approach websites, is be just like a good sales assistant. And then there's one other thing to remember, which is everything that you do on a website has to be fast and it has to be simple. The minute you introduce an element of delay or confusion, you give the customer a reason to go somewhere else, because there's a million things competing for your attention. So on that very point, I want to introduce a first note of caution. I don't see much of this these days. There used to be a lot of it a while ago, but under no circumstances should any of you engage in this type of thing, like gratuitous animations and things that pop and things that slide out and things that go up and things that go down. So if you only remember one thing today, just remember that, like, animation kills. So please don't do it as much as you're tempted. I know some of you will build your own websites, you know, and I'm sure you're all capable of doing that. There's a tendency when you learn a piece of technology that you want to use all the features in it. So don't do that. So I'm going to start with the first example. And I don't know if Grant is on this call or not. So this is not about naming and shaming, but it is about sharing real world examples. So this is a real world site at the moment. Now, not only are all of the images missing, but every single section of this website spins and does things. And it might seem rather trivial, but every animation, you know, takes a sort of a second or two for your brain to sort of focus on. And it just destroys your concentration and it frustrates you. And don't do it. All right. So then I'm now going to get into maybe some slightly more nuanced examples. So the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to follow through the framework. I'm going to pick each sort of part of the framework, and then I'm going to talk about some examples. And if you guys have questions, I would just raise your hand, or however this thing works. Just shout your questions out, and I'll be very happy to do it. So,
sorry, first question.
Yeah,
as opposed to animations, can you do videos instead as a section of a video?
Good question. I will make reference to that. That's a really good question. Yeah. So am I in the right place? Well, Mark, it's timely that you asked that question, because unfortunately you are the first victim really of this. So am I in the right place? Am I in the right place? I don't know. I mean, you guys do two quite different things, I think, if I've understood your website correctly, right?
Yes.
You do sort of high-end design stuff, but you also do domestic electrical stuff.
Yes.
Now, I think anybody looking for domestic stuff may not know that they're in the right place. They may not know. They may not know. Now, what they would know is that you're called FigJam.
Yes.
Now, maybe you want to share the reason why you call FigJam with this group, or maybe
yes,
don't.
It's an acronym, and it stands for "Fuck, I'm good. Just ask me."
Yeah. Okay. So I did not know that acronym, but there's nowhere within that acronym the word domestic, you know, electrics. You know,
No.
so it's like it's very, very abstract. You know, and you do say it 5 times, so you would think it would come through. But I mean, I think this is a piece of control equipment, right, or something.
Yes. So yes,
Yes.
mechanical engineering, automation, and then there's the domestic electrical stuff as
Yeah.
the commercial stuff. So
Exactly. So, if somebody's in a rush and they've been referred to you and they come here, there's a chance they might not go any further because it isn't spelled out to them. Now, in your defense, obviously, we've got this section here. This section here talks about all of your services, right? So you might see it. Oh, actually, I just realized I've missed one more fig jam. You got 6. But it would be very, very easy to miss. And then if you scroll down the page, you can just about see it here. But the broad point is you've got a lot of real estate there. You've got lots of space to simply reassure the customer that they're in the right place. It would be my personal opinion you could showcase what you do more effectively than you're doing right now. And again, apologies. I know you guys have full-time jobs during the day. You do not have time to come tinker with websites. So I understand that this is difficult. So, don't take this as anything other than constructive. But I think you're making it harder for the customer here. So
even if I've got there's buttons there saying electrical installations and mechanical. So when you click the electrical, it then takes you to electrical. But if you want it mechanical, this is why I use this as the home page. Now maybe I might be getting that wrong.
100%, 100%. I'll come on to that point later. Of course, your navigation is great. You should have navigation. But if you think about the amount of space that you dedicated to it,
yes,
versus all of the other stuff that doesn't convey much, that's more the point I'm making. And of course you use both, but it's a case of sort of getting the right balance. So the first tip is use simple text and images that relate to your service and that people can understand. So you've got to think of images that people can understand. So I don't know if Ernest Clinton is on this call right now. Ernest has gone a bit even more abstract here. This is how the page loads. So I think there's some technical stuff wrong with this page, but I mean the word electrical is mentioned there, but you would be forgiven for missing it. You really got to want to find the answer on this page. There's nothing on this page that gives you much of a clue as to what this company does. Going the other way, there are some people that go very, very literal. I can't remember whose site this is. Now, I think this is a good example of maybe not thinking like a customer. And I know you guys are all very proud of like your testing equipment, but most consumers do. When you say the word fluke, most people think of like a trick shot in snooker or whatever. They do not think of testing equipment, So it's like, it's a very literal. I know why you guys are doing it, but again, does the customer relate to these guides and things like that? So I think there's a balance to be found in terms of doing this stuff. And here's a good example, right? I have to say these guys get a lot of prizes from me in terms of the way they've done their site. So Sheffield Renewable Services, they say what they do, simple text, and they've got images to support it. It's very hard to get confused about what these people do. So in terms of first impressions, I would urge you guys to try and think about something like this. The next layer down is where it does become harder, right? So have you got the specific thing I need? Now, what you can't do is list every single service you do in text on the home page. So it's how you give those signals to people to make it as easy as possible for them to go, oh, I think they've got the model barbecue that I want, or they've got gas barbecues and my barbecue is gas barbecue, so great. So how do you go about doing that? And I think this is where people start to struggle a bit. So you guys might have heard of these folks, Artisan Electrics. So I think they do electrics. I think that's a fancy Tesla. But to your point, Mark, about the navigation, right? These guys have got a navigation, but someone has got so excited about this image that they didn't realize that it completely obliterates their navigation. You know, so again, find the balance, keep it simple. Don't be seduced by, you know, like super glamorous photography that ends up, you know, making it actually hard for people to read. And one of the things you'll find is if your images have got a lot of white in them or a lot of black in them, you'll find it very hard to overlay text on top of them. Now, Jordan's site scrolls through a lot of images, so you think, well, the next one's going to be easier. No, doesn't get any easier. You can't read the navigation. Now, again, if you've got a very well-known brand, customers are going to forgive you for this, and they will succeed in spite of your website. But if you're building up, you know, it just make it easy for the customers to find the thing that you sell. So try and use your homepage to not only convey the broad thing you do, but maybe the core services that you offer. That would be my advice. So hit them straight away with the core things, the most popular things, the things you feel most confident selling. Try and communicate that up front, and try and steer away from like a beautiful kind of marketing type image, because it won't convey as much information as you think it's going to do. So if Jordan, instead of doing this, had done something like this, now obviously he's not going to do this design, but you know, just dedicate some real estate to the services that you want to sell, and it's so much easier for the customers to know where to go. Great, I'm in the right place, and they do commercial solar. Fab, great. So trying to do that sort of thing. I think this is a nice website. I don't know if Chris Stubbs is on this call or not. It's a nice website. I mean, the choice of image is interesting. If you look really closely, you can see here, that's Chris's van in the background with his name on it. Very sort of unfaked image that he's got there. Does the room convey that this guy's an electrician? No, but the text does. So I think this is all right. But in terms of what Chris does, I mean, that is in this section here, services. So the customer has to go to services to find out what he does. The problem is when you get to the service page, this is Chris's service page. This is what's above the fold. Without being dramatic, I think this is the most terrifying service page I've seen. It's this really dark image. I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. It looks very, very mysterious. Now, below the fold, when the page loads, you see the services, but it's like, again, maybe Chris took this picture and he really likes it and it's garden lighting and he knows the context, but your customers won't know the context. They're just going to see this. So again, try not to be like seduced by really beautiful images. Try and think about simplicity. Steve, I expect to see Steve on this call. Steve's got a good website, but again, he relies on the services part of his website to try and convey what he does. If you click on Steve's services, you get this menu. Okay, now this menu isn't bad, but Steve does something really interesting. The second item in his menu is this thing called small jobs. Now, what's a small job? You know, I talk to electricians all day, every day, and one of the things that electricians hate is when a customer calls them up and says, "Oh, I'll take you 20 minutes. It's only a small job." You know, it's like, how do you know what a small job is? You know, I've got to do X, Y, Z. But, you know, Steve's navigation is encouraging customers to sort of think like that. So it's not that clear to the customer. Where, you know, and it sort of gets worse in that when you click small jobs, this is the page you go to. And that's everything above the fold. So you're none the wiser. Now, if you scroll down, you start to see what he means by a small job. But instead of saying small jobs, he could have just built a menu that lists all these items and spells it out. So a little bit of thinking about your core services and trying to spell them out in very simple language will make it easier for your customers. So the second principle I would try and, or third, sorry, is don't make your customers guess. Don't make them hunt. Just spell it out. You know what you sell. You know what you sell the most of. You know what you're competitive on. Spell it out. Make it really easy for the customer to see. The third area is where I think it starts to get more subtle, more nuanced. You're asking the customer to trust you, and there are lots of different signals that you give out to a customer to help build trust. So it's hard to come up with a specific formula, but there are good things to do and there are bad things to do. And from like an adage from making movies, making television programs, is they always say, show, don't tell. So, you know, a good character walks on screen and you can tell by the way they hold themselves, their accent, the way they're dressed, the context, you know about that character. There's not a voiceover which says, you know, this man was a lawyer and he'd worked for 50 years, he was very rich and blah, blah, blah. You don't do that. You just get it based on the images and the context. So show, don't tell, and be authentic when you do that. So the MH Electrical, I like this website. Is it the most modern website in the world? No. But I look at this page and it's got all of the ingredients that I think you need to convince a customer. So he's got his registered competent person logo, he's got his NAPIT logo, he's got his Google reviews, and then he's got, and it, you know, if you scroll down, you'll see more. He's got lots of pictures that clearly were taken by him on site. You can just tell. So it's not about having the most beautiful picture in the world. It's about demonstrating I did this job. I've done all of these jobs. Now, you guys may agree or disagree. It is a judgment call. But for me, I looked at this and I thought, this guy does a lot of different things. He's very competent. And he's very confident showing his reviews because it's right at the top of the page, etc., etc. So for me, that sort of thing just worked. Compare and contrast, I can't remember whose site this is, but I looked at this page and I thought, well, that's a stock image. I've seen that before. You know, words like flexible service, satisfaction guaranteed, established, reputable, quality, la 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 la. They're all just a bunch of words. This is someone telling you that they're good. They're not showing you that they're good. So be aware of things like that. And I think, look, if I said to you, you know, I was going to cook some house ground, grass-fed, hand-shaped beef on an artisan stone-cracked wheat rounds, accompanied with oil-roasted pomme de terre julienne with a lightly sweetened tomato reduction, and what you actually got was burger and chips with ketchup. You know, like, just, I like burgers. There's nothing wrong with burgers. Just say you're selling a burger. I think sometimes when you've got a website and you've got this bit of white space, you're like, oh God, I'm gonna have to fill it with some stuff. And you start, you know, you start writing like Dickens. You know, it just, really simple language is so much more like endearing and convincing to your customers than trying to make something sound fancy. It rings hollow, and it's just a sort of, it's a turn off for your customers. So try and avoid that. This is a really nice site, EM Electrical Matters. I brought these guys up because they're just full of photographs that they've taken of the things that they've done, but then they also have a little link in their site to Tumblr. Like, I didn't know people still use Tumblr, but every single job they've done is there in Tumblr, and you can take your time, you can look, and it's just very, very convincing. So for whatever reason, they didn't want to put all the images on their website. Maybe they didn't have time. Maybe they had to pay someone to do it and they didn't want to. So they just linked somewhere else. Nothing wrong with doing that. You know, I think it's totally acceptable to link to your Instagram to put all of the pictures of your work. And I'd say a significant proportion of your customers, your new customers these days, will be really happy just looking at your work on Instagram. They actually won't care about your website that much in a way. So showcasing that work is really important. Mark, you asked about videos. I really like this website as well. So I won't play it, but basically, I can't remember the name of the person whose website this is, but this CEO here just talks about his business, talks about where they work, the sort of things they do. It's really natural. And I watched that video and I thought, I like this guy. I trust this guy. You know, so I think these little cues, he's just very, very authentic. It's not pretentious. This is very straightforward. Things like that, I think, help build a lot of trust. So to your point, Mark, I don't think there's anything wrong with video. I mean, the way it generally works on websites is there's a video there. If you want to play it, you hit play. I would caution against videos that play automatically. It's just sort of annoying. You might be on the train or whatever it is, and you don't want to hear that noise. But yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. Compared to stuff like this, which I see all the time, you know, why choose us? And it's just a sea of text. And the point is, like, anyone can write nice things about themselves. Doesn't prove anything, and nor does it convince anyone. By doing that, you're much better off showing what you do than you are making grand claims about what you can do. So, like, the fifth tip is, like, pictures of your work, pictures of your team with simple descriptions, not long sections of text. They go further than anything else. And, you know, some people have incredibly professional pictures taken. I personally don't think you need that at all. And there's a bit of me which says, actually, if a picture is slightly amateur, it's actually a good thing because it looks more real. It communicates that you were on site, you took that picture, and that's what builds trust. I think very, very glossy pictures, people are so overexposed to very high quality images that it doesn't register with them in the same way that a sort of slightly, you know, badly lit picture would do. And I think you've all got phones, you can all do this. There's no reason to stop you not doing it. All right, the final section. I'm conscious I've been going on for half an hour. If the customer decides they want to buy, how do you do it? So, not rocket science, but I think there are some constraints on this. So, Premier Renewables Wiltshire, good-looking site, very clear call to action here in the corner, pre-quotation. The problem is that when you hit that free quotation page, you come through to this page. Now, we could talk at length about whether or not electricians turn up on site wearing suits, but I don't think they do. So it's a slightly strange choice of image here. But I think more concern is this. 2 mobile numbers. I don't know what that makes you think, but when I see 2 mobile numbers, I think what they're saying is, if the first one doesn't answer, call the second one. Which already you've subtly communicated to the customer, we might not answer. So be slightly careful of things like this. There was a debate, I think, on this group about whether or not you should show a landline or a mobile. I'm not sure. Landlines definitely do look more official, but I think people realize that landlines don't get answered after 6 o'clock. But I think, you know, again, I call a lot of electricians. The the majority of calls that I make to electricians go unanswered. People are busy. So I think that creates a problem. So I think you should probably set expectations. If you're going to put a telephone number, you know, say if we don't pick up, we're busy, but we will call you back, or something like that. But set the expectations up front, because when customers, you know, they go to the trouble of finding someone, they look at the site, they're like, oh, great. They call the number, no one answers. Again, half of those customers, that'll be it. They won't call you back because they want to move on to the next person, because they need to get an answer that day for whatever reason. So be careful about things like that. Of course, the other thing that people do is they drive to a contact form. So it's too small for me to read the name of this site. This site does security. Very nice image, I've got to say. Instantly communicates what business these guys are in, you know, a security camera. They've done a nice job with get a quote right in the middle of the site. Brilliant. Okay, so you hit get a quote, you come through to this page. That's how the page loads. And then underneath, there's this form. Now, really, this is just a glorified call me back page. It says you're going to get a quote, but what they're asking the customer to do is please provide as much information as possible. You know, if you would like a quote on CCTV, intruder alarms, fire alarms, then do get in touch. Well, most customers will not know what information is necessary for that. Or you're putting them in the frame of mind where they have to guess. And I think when customers have to guess, what you're really doing is you're giving them an excuse to put off doing this job that they should have done yesterday. And they're going to go and make a cup of tea, or they're going to go and do something else. I think if you're going to drive people to a form, then be precise about what it is you need from them. Because I think this contact us, give us as much information as possible. It's a sort of lazy way of spelling out what you need, and it doesn't help the customer, and in the long term, it doesn't really help you. Andrew, you've got a question.